Have you ever wished you could just download knowledge? Like instantly grasp centuries of really complex philosophy without wading through all the dense texts? Find a shortcut to understanding.
That urge, that desire for clarity, it's ancient. And it's kind of what we try to do here on AI History Western Philosophy. We dig through sources, research, notes, and try to pull out the key insights for you.
And today we're diving into someone pretty foundational. Anaxagoras of Clazomena. He was around, 500 to 428 BCE. And he brought this really revolutionary idea into early Greek thought about the cosmos.
Yeah, the idea of mind, or Nous, as the Greeks called it. And if I understand the context, the philosophical scene he walked into, it was kind of gridlocked.
How so?
Well, you had thinkers like Parmenides who'd built this incredibly powerful logical argument. Terrifyingly logical, really. It basically seemed to prove that change and difference and even movement, everything we see couldn't actually exist.
Right. His whole argument was what is can't come from what is not, and what is can't just disappear into what is not. So nothing can ever truly begin or end.
Exactly. It sounds abstract, but the implication is huge. If Parmenides is right, then the world you perceive every day, things growing, changing, moving, it's all fundamentally an illusion.
It's a massive challenge, isn't it? How do you argue against that logic when your own eyes tell you something different? How do philosophers reconcile that? You see a tree grow, but logic says growth is impossible.
That was the huge hurdle. And Anaxagoras, his big ambition was what philosophers call saving the phenomena. He wanted to find a way to make sense of the changing world we observe, the multiplicity of things, without throwing out Parmenides' core rule that nothing comes from nothing.
A real balancing act.
Totally. And his solution was radical for the time. He proposed this fundamental dualism, not one ultimate principle like earlier thinkers tried, but two.
Two eternal infinite principles. You have the Migma, this chaotic primordial mixture of everything.
And then completely separate, you have Nous mind, this unmixed unique entity. And that separation, that idea of a mind standing apart from matter, well, that just echoes down through centuries of philosophy. It really sets the stage for Plato, Aristotle, you name it.
Okay, so before we really get into the weeds here, just a quick but important point about what we're doing. AI, like this podcast, can sometimes present ideas as solid fact, hallucinate. Philosophy itself has often done something similar, asserting a kind of authority over reality.
Right. So think of this whole podcast as an experiment exploring that connection. We're not claiming final authority here. This isn't a lecture, and it's definitely no substitute for reading Anaxagoras or Plato yourself.
Our goal is just to spark some ideas, connect some dots, and point you towards those original texts. So, our mission today on AI History of Western Philosophy. Unpack Anaxagoras' big ideas, especially Nous. We'll dig into why it's kind of ambiguous, and crucially show how those ambiguities weren't just like flaws. They were actually necessary steps, the intellectual fertilizer, for Plato's later ideas like the Demiurge and the form of the good.
It's a fascinating lineage of thought. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's set that cosmic stage Anaxagoras created. This grand dualism aimed at solving that Parmenidean problem. As you said, Parmenides' logic, what is, can't come from what is not, was just devastating for explaining change.
Right. True generation, something genuinely new coming into being from nothing, impossible. True destruction, something ceasing to exist entirely, also impossible. It basically rendered our everyday sensory experience, suspect, illusory even.
So philosophers were stuck. Either deny change or explain it without violating that core Parmenidean rule.
And Anaxagoras steps in. He wants to validate our experience of change and difference, but also uphold the idea that nothing is truly created ex nihilo. Nothing from nothing.
And his big move, his audacious answer, was these two eternal first principles. The Migma, the primeval mixture, and Nous, the mind.
And that's what's so different. You had earlier guys, Thales saying everything is water, and Anaximenes saying it's air, looking for one ultimate stuff. And Anaxagoras says, nope, reality is fundamentally built on two distinct kinds of things from the start.
That alone is a huge shift, a deep split right at the foundation of everything.
Absolutely.
So let's zoom in on this Migma, this primordial mixture. What's it actually like? Anaxagoras describes it as a state where all things were all together, unlimited in number and smallness.
Yeah, picture this cosmic soup, but infinitely dense, infinitely packed. Everything imaginable is in there, but totally intermingled. So much so that nothing is distinct. Hot, cold, wet, dry, bright, dark, even much earth, all just blended together into this chaotic mass.
A chaotic plenum. Right. Not an empty void, but an overflowing fullness of potential, just completely disordered.
And that's his clever way around Parmenides' problem of becoming. See, for Anaxagoras, Diversity doesn't need to be created. It was always there, just hidden, latent within the mixture. Change isn't creation, it's separation. Things becoming distinct, emerging from the blend.
Unveiling, not creating. Okay. And what are the actual ingredients of this mixture? He calls them seeds, spermata, or Aristotle later called them homoiomere, things of like parts.
And this is where it gets really interesting and different. These aren't just simple elements like earth or fire. The seeds include things like flesh, bone, hair, gold, complex substances.
So like tiny bits of actual hair and bone existed eternally in this cosmic soup.
That's the idea. And the principle behind it is homoioumeria. Any part of a substance is qualitatively the same as the whole. A tiny bit of flesh is still flesh. A tiny bit of gold is still gold.
Which helps him explain things like, say, how we grow. He famously asked, how can hair come from what is not hair, or flesh from what is not flesh?
Exactly, his answer. The food we eat must already contain tiny, imperceptible portions of hair, flesh, bone, everything. Our bodies just sort of extract and assemble them.
So the hair on my head was technically in that apple I ate this morning. Just in unbelievably tiny amounts.
According to Anaxagoras, yes, it's a wild thought. It means everything we perceive isn't pure anything.
And the logic holding this all together is his idea of infinite divisibility. There is no least of what is small, but always a lesser.
Right. This was likely his answer to Zeno's paradoxes about motion and division. If matter had a smallest possible unit, like an atom in the later sense, then his everything and everything idea wouldn't work. You couldn't have a perfect mixture down to the infinitesimal level.
Because you'd eventually hit a pure unit.
Precisely. But because matter is infinitely divisible, any tiny bit, no matter how small, still contains portions of everything else. It's mixture all the way down.
So a tree isn't just tree.
Nope. It's a temporary aggregate where tree seeds predominate. But technically, it still has traces of rock seed, water seed, even flesh seed in it, just in vanishingly small quantities. It forces you to rethink what it means for something to be a distinct thing. It's all about proportion.
Okay, so that's the Migma, this infinitely complex, passive, eternally mixed potential. What about the other side? The active principle.
That's noances, mind. And it's defined, first and foremost, by being the opposite of the Migma in one crucial respect.
That's not mixed.
Exactly. It's the only thing in the cosmos that escapes the rule of everything and everything. And Anaxagoras is incredibly clear on this in fragment B12. He says basically other things share in everything, but mind is unlimited, self-ruling, mixed with nothing. It stands alone.
That separation is key.
It's defining feature. And from that separation flow its extraordinary properties. It's called unlimited, apeiron, self-controlling, autocrates.
Implying it has its own will, its own agency.
Yes. And it's the finest leptotaton and purest catharton. Plus, crucially, it has complete knowledge of everything, and the greatest power is shui megistone.
Knowledge and power. And what does it do with that knowledge and power?
Its main cosmic job is initiating the great cosmic rotation. Think of it like starting a giant vortex or centrifuge. That motion begins the process of separating things out from the Migma dense collects with dense, rare with rare, and so on.
So it kicks things off.
It kicks things off, but it also seems to continue controlling the rotation and significantly everything that has life. So
it's not just a starter pistol, it's also the ongoing conductor, keeping the cosmic orchestra playing in time.
That seems to be the implication, yeah, an ongoing governance. And Anaxagoras gives a very specific reason why Nous has to be unmixed. Its purity is the condition for its power.
How so?
He argues, essentially, that if Nous were mixed with anything else, it would share in all things. And whatever it was mixed with would hinder it, prevent it from controlling things the way it does by being alone and pure.
So to be the boss, it can't be one of the workers. It has to stand apart from the system it's governing.
Precisely. If it were part of the Migma, subject to the same intermingling, it would be dragged down, limited, just another component. Its separation is its power.
This sets up a really stark dualism then. Active, knowing, ordering mind on one side.
And passive, infinitely complex, disordered matter on the other.
But this division isn't just about cosmic mechanics. It has huge implications for knowledge, for epistemology.
Okay, what are those?
Well, think about it. The Migma is defined by total intermixture. How could anything within that mixture gain clear, objective knowledge of the mixture? If the knower is contaminated by the known, entangled with it,
then its knowledge would be just as confused and mixed up.
Exactly. So for Nous to have complete understanding over everything, its perspective has to be transcendent. It must stand apart from the chaos it comprehends and orders.
So objective knowledge requires separation, the knower separate from the known. Anaxagoras basically pioneers that idea at a cosmic level. Nous is the first great example of a knowing subject that must be distinct from the object of its knowledge to truly understand and master it.
And you can already see the seeds of Plato there, right? His later separation of the intelligible world of forms from the messy, changing, sensible world.
Absolutely. And Anaxagoras is laying fundamental groundwork, not just for cosmology, but for the very theory of knowledge in the West.
Okay, but let's dig into the enigma of Nous itself. Because its actual nature, well, it's pretty debated, isn't it? The fragments leave it kind of ambiguous. Is it super refined matter or something genuinely non-material?
That's the million drachma question. And you're right, the descriptions hover. On the one hand, you have language that sounds quite physical. It's called the most rarefied of all things, lepton. The purest, kathartiton.
Like the finest possible mist, the most subtle kind of air or ether.
Sort of. Using superlatives of physical qualities like fineness or purity naturally makes you think it's on a continuum with matter, just at the extreme end.
So was Anaxagoras just talking about a really, really sophisticated kind of cosmic air freshener that somehow organizes stuff?
Well, that's roughly how later thinkers, especially Aristotle, tended to read him. Aristotle had a much clearer distinction between material and immaterial. Looking back, he saw Anaxagoras' Nous as never quite breaking free from matter. It was just a uniquely subtle, active kind of matter.
And that fits the Ionian tradition he came from, right? Thales is water, and Anaximenes air. They were looking for material principles.
Exactly. So it's plausible Anaxagoras still thought of Nous as the ultimate form of matter, distinct only in its extreme subtlety and power, not in its fundamental kind of being. Some scholars call this a corporeal dualism, two physical principles, mind and mixture, interacting.
But then there's the other side of the coin. The functions of Nous seem, well, not very material at all.
That's the strong counterargument. It possesses knowledge. It seems to have intention when mind began to cause motion, implying a deliberate act. It has universal power. These aren't properties we usually associate with mere matter, however fine.
And it's self-ruling autocrates. That implies agency, self-initiation, which the passive Migma totally lacks.
Plus, remember its defining feature being unmixed. It's exempt from the fundamental law governing the entire physical realm, that everything in everything principle. That ontological exemption really suggests it's in a different category altogether.
It's not just another thing in the cosmos, even a really special one. It's more like the condition for the order of all the other things.
Precisely. Its ability to know, to will, to initiate that seems to lift it out of the realm of purely mechanical necessity that governs the Migma. Honestly, when you look at what it does, it sounds less like a physical force and more like, well, a mind.
Okay, so how do we square this circle? The finest matter language versus the seemingly incorporeal functions. Was Anaxagoras just stuck for words?
I think that's a big part of it. He was pushing the boundaries of philosophical language. He didn't have the nice, neat Platonic or Aristotelian vocabulary for corporeal versus incorporeal. Those distinctions came later, partly because of the problems thinkers like Anaxagoras raised.
So maybe finest and purest were his best attempts, maybe even metaphors, to describe something radically different, something utterly superior and causally potent.
That's a very plausible way to read it. Like trying to explain electricity using only terms for liquids or air you'd grasp for analogies. The key, perhaps, is to see Nous as defined primarily by its function, not its substance.
Ah, so focus on what it does, not what it's made of.
Exactly. The evidence for it being matter rests on those adjectives finest, purest. But the evidence for its unique mind-like status rests on the verbs it knows, it controls, it rules, it sets in order. These speak to agency, intelligence.
And his core reason for it being separate was functional too. It had to be pure to rule effectively, unhindered.
Right. Earlier principles, like water or air, just acted according to their physical nature. Nous, however, acts according to its intellectual nature. So even if he vaguely imagined it as some super subtle stuff, he gave it powers that are functionally non-physical: mind, knowledge, will.
So he created a category of being that acts incorporeally, even if he couldn't label it perfectly. A proto-incorporeal concept.
That's a great way to put it. It's this transitional stage where the function of the principle has raced ahead of the language available to describe its substance.
So Anaxagoras was laying the conceptual railway track, even if the train of fully fledged immateriality hadn't quite arrived yet. That's a huge leap.
It really is, and this very ambiguity, this unfinished business surrounding Nous, leads us directly into the next crucial phase: how Plato inherited and transformed these ideas.
Right, because the story doesn't end with Anaxagoras. His innovations, especially the unresolved questions about Nous, became major drivers for Plato.
Absolutely. This brings us to what's often called the Socratic disappointment. Plato, in his dialogue The Phaedo, has Socrates describe his own intellectual journey. And Socrates recalls being incredibly excited when he first heard about Anaxagoras' Nous.
Why was he so excited?
Because the idea that mind directed everything gave him hope. He hoped Anaxagoras would explain why everything was arranged the way it was specifically, why it was arranged for the best. He wasn't just looking for mechanical causes. He wanted a teleological explanation, one based on purpose and goodness.
He wanted to know why the Earth was where it was, because that was the best place for it, not just how it got there.
Exactly that. He envisioned this cosmic intelligence acting with the good as its ultimate goal.
But that's not what he found.
Right. The Phaedo describes his crushing letdown. He discovered that Anaxagoras, having introduced Nous to start the cosmic motion, basically dropped it after that. When it came to explaining actual phenomena, stars, weather, geography, Anaxagoras just fell back on material causes. Air, ether, water, vortices. No mention of Nous guiding things towards the best outcome.
So Nous was just used to kickstart the process and then left the building, like a Deus Ex Machina.
Precisely. That's the classic criticism. A convenient device hauled in to solve the initial problem of motion, but not integrated into the ongoing explanation of why things are as they are. Aristotle later made the same point, saying Anaxagoras used mind only when he couldn't find another cause, like a last resort.
The fundamental failure, then, from Plato and Aristotle's viewpoint, was that Nous didn't act for the sake of the good. It brought order, but not necessarily good order.
Exactly. It was like a cosmic physicist setting up the initial conditions, but not a cosmic ethicist or artist designing it with a beautiful, good purpose in mind. And this really highlights a crucial distinction. What's the difference between mere order, a functional arrangement, and order that is aimed at goodness? Why did that matter so profoundly to Socrates and Plato?
And that question, that disappointment, leads directly into Plato's own cosmology, particularly in the Timaeus. You can almost read the Timaeus as Plato saying, okay, Anaxagoras, you had a great idea with Nous, but you didn't take it far enough. Let me show you how it should work.
That's a very good way to see it. The Timaeus systematically injects that missing teleology, that purpose-driven explanation, into the idea of a mind-ordered cosmos. Maybe the best way to see the transformation is to compare Anaxagoras' Nous directly with Plato's key concepts, the Demiurge and the form of the good.
Okay, let's do that. Starting with their ontological status, what kind of being are they? Anaxagoras' Nous. Well, we've seen it's ambiguous. Sort of matterish, sort of not. Proto-incorporeal.
Right. No, Plato's Demiurge in the Timaeus is much clearer. He's a divine, rational craftsman, a distinct agent, a maker. He's separate from the eternal forms he uses as models, and separate from the material receptacle he shapes. Then, above even the Demiurge, you have Plato's form of the good from the Republic. This isn't an agent at all. It's the ultimate transcendent form, the source of all reality, described as being beyond being, a much more layered hierarchical picture.
A definite step up in complexity and clarity. Okay, what about their primary function? Anaxagoras' Nous started the cosmic rotation, separated things out, and ruled living things, initiator and organizer.
Plato's Demiurge, by contrast, is explicitly a fashioner. He intelligently shapes the material world by looking to the eternal forms as a perfect pattern. He's a cosmic artisan, and the form of the good. Its function isn't to do anything directly, but to be the ultimate source of reality, truth, and intelligibility. It's the ultimate why, the ultimate standard of perfection that makes the Demiurge's work possible and desirable.
Got it. And their relationship to matter. Nous acts on the Migma, but is unmixed, a controller-controlled dualism, but a bit fuzzy on the details of unmixed.
The Demiurge also acts on matter, that pre-existing, disorderly receptacle imposing order based on the forms, a clearer craftsman-material relationship. And the form of the good is completely transcendent. It's the ultimate cause, but it has no direct contact with matter. It influences reality through the forms and the Demiurge's desire to emulate them.
Okay, and the big one. Teleological purpose. This is where Anaxagoras fell short for Socrates. Nous was ambiguous, seemingly just a mechanical starter, not explicitly aiming for the best.
Exactly. But Plato's Demiurge is explicitly teleological. The Timaeus says the Demiurge is good, and because he was good, he wanted everything to be as like himself, as good and rational as possible. His actions are driven by a desire for goodness and optimal order. And the form of the good is that ultimate good itself. It's the final cause, the ultimate reason why the Demiurge, being rational and good, creates a beautiful, ordered world. It's the definition of best.
So Plato essentially takes the agency Anaxagoras gave to Nous, gives it to the Demiurge, but then crucially adds the motivation. The Demiurge acts because he is good and desires to instantiate the good, which he perceives by looking to the forms ultimately grounded in the form of the good. He fulfilled Socrates' hope.
Precisely. The Demiurge is the rational, good craftsman Socrates was looking for. He doesn't just start a vortex. He uses an eternal blueprint, the forms, to make the world as good as it can be. It provides the cosmic moral compass Anaxagoras lacked.
But Plato's solution wasn't just swapping Nous for the Demiurge, was it? It was more complex.
Much more. He created a hierarchy. The Demiurge is the intelligent, efficient cause, the maker. But he makes things by looking towards something higher. The eternal forms, and ultimately the form of the good, which is the final cause, the ultimate purpose.
So the form of the good is the ultimate why, but it doesn't do the making itself.
Exactly. It's not an agent like Nous or the Demiurge. It is the supreme value, the ultimate reality and intelligibility, the reason why a rational creator would create a good world. Plato brilliantly resolves the ambiguity in Anaxagoras' Nous by essentially splitting its potential roles.
How so?
He gives the active world-ordering agency to the Demiurge, and he elevates the principle of ultimate value and intelligibility into the transcendent form of the good. Anaxagoras had sort of bundled initiating motion and being the principle of order together. Plato systematically untangles these, giving us a much clearer picture of efficient causality, the Demiurge, versus final causality, the form of the good. It's a truly monumental reorganization.
So wrapping this all up, Anaxagoras really was a pivotal figure. His dualism of mixture in mind just changed the game, moving beyond earlier, simpler models.
Absolutely. A watershed moment. And his idea of Nous, this proto-incorporeal principle, defined more by what it did than what it was a huge conceptual leap. But as we've seen, he left its ultimate purpose hanging. Order, yes. Goodness. Not explicitly.
But we've argued that these ambiguities weren't failures, but actually incredibly productive. By introducing this powerful but non-teleological mind, he created a philosophical itch that Plato and Aristotle just had to scratch.
Right. Aristotle called him a sober man among the random talkers for looking for an ordering cause. But his, let's say, reluctance to spell out the purpose of that order left his revolution feeling incomplete. He asked the question implicitly, but didn't fully answer it.
So his real legacy wasn't just Nous itself, but the question Nous forced onto the table. If intelligence orders the universe, what's its goal? What's the point?
That's the Anaxagorian question. And it's precisely that question, born from the ambiguities of Nous, that pushed Plato and Aristotle to develop their own more sophisticated concepts. The Demiurge, the forms, the unmoved mover, the form of the good. They were completing Anaxagoras' unfinished business, and in doing so, they set the course for much of Western philosophy.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, that ancient question. If there's an intelligence behind things, what's its purpose? And how does that resonate today as we grapple with artificial intelligence? When we build intelligent systems, what is or what should be their purpose? Does our human idea of good even apply?
A question echoing from 5th century BCE Athens right into our laps today. It shows how these fundamental philosophical problems endure. We really hope this discussion encourages you to explore these ideas further. Reading Plato's Phaedo and Timaeus and the surviving fragments of Anaxagoras himself is incredibly rewarding.
Definitely. We hope you enjoyed this exploration on AI history of Western philosophy. Thanks for joining us.